Okay, Rachel T says, I'm still fuzzy on the logical steps for self-publishing. Yeah, it's there are some steps, especially if you've never done it the first time, or if it's your first time publishing. If you're familiar with the Alliance of Independent Authors, they actually have it's like a philosophy that there's 7 stages of publishing. And if you think about a book as progressing through these 7 stages, then you'll do better. So I'm going to try to name the 7 stages. Hopefully I don't have a politician moment where, I only say 6, but essentially the first stage is writing your book. So getting the words down on the page, that's the first stage. The second stage is editorial. So once you've finished the book and you've self-revised it, gone through self-revision, then you get it off to an editor or a couple of editors who give you feedback on the book and help you strengthen it from an editorial perspective. Then at that point, you enter the production stage. And the production stage is where you take the raw or the finished manuscript that has been edited, and then you package it. So you package it with a book cover. So you work with a cover designer, and then you package it with your formatting. So if you have a formatting app, or if you do any kind of ebook or paperback formatting, that's when you do that. And then you also package it with a book description and figuring out what the actual sales page packaging is going to be. It's kind of marketing, but also I consider it part of the production process. And then once you get out of the production process, then you move into the distribution process, or the publication / distribution. And that's when you upload your book to all the different retailers. You figure out which retailers you're going to sell your book at. So, are you going to be exclusive to Amazon, or are you going to try to maximize your distribution? So like I publish on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Draft to Digital, Google Play, Publish Drive, StreetLib, Smashwords, and then those places get me into all sorts of other places. So you think about maximizing your distribution, and that's where you try to figure all of that out. Then once you've gotten the book published and you've got it into the distribution channels, then you move into marketing. And marketing is its own phase distinct from promotion, because marketing is how you help people find. It's basically, Joanna Penn gave the best description of marketing that I've ever heard, which is marketing is letting people who are interested in your book know that it exists so that they can buy it. So as I said, book description, sales page stuff, keywords, categories, positioning, thinking about how you can position a book on your website. All these things are marketing. It's kind of like tip of the ice or below the iceberg stuff, right? And that's how you let people know that the book exists. Then you move into promotion. And promotion is when you are more active. So you're actively pushing your book on people. When I say push, I don't mean it that way, but you're putting the book out there so that all the work that you've done in marketing will help people buy your book together. And then the 7th stage is, which I hope that's 7, but the 7th stage is the stage where it's kind of perpetual. It just kind of always exists. And that is rights licensing. So if you want to license your rights to someone, or create additional formats of the book, or do things like that, finding ways to exploit your copyright, that's how the rights licensing stage works. And that's where you can really make a lot of money if you understand copyright and if you understand business. So I hope that was 7 stages: writing, editorial, production, distribution / publication, marketing, promotion, and rights licensing. So I didn't embarrass myself today. So those are the 7 stages. And Rachel, if you're interested, I've got a book. It's called 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered. It actually goes through those 7 stages of publishing and answers the most common questions. I'll post a link to that in the comments. It's authorlevelup.com/150 if you are interested in checking that out. That'll help you with just walking through the steps of the process. But it's good stuff. You only publish your first book once, right? All right. Sig Newton, what is your best advice for finding beta readers? I actually have a video on beta readers on my channel. I'll see if I can grab a link to it maybe during the next writing session. But just go to my channel or just type in Beta Readers Author Level Up, and you'll see it. And it's called The Ultimate Guide to Beta Readers. So there's pretty much everything you need to know is in that video. Ty asks, question when writing into the dark, how do you solve the problem of chapters that aren't fitting right? I'd have to change the order of events or delete a chapter. Yeah, I would say it happens. It happens. Follow your gut. Sometimes what I would say is figure out a way to fix the problem with as few steps as possible. So sometimes chapters just don't fit because of a couple sentences or a couple paragraphs at the beginning or at the end of the chapters. If that's a situation you're in, which it doesn't sound like it is, but if that's a situation, try that. If you do have to move stuff around, that's okay too. Just make sure you're not spending, a whole lot of time doing that, because it's going to delay your process and it'll introduce the critical voice into your process. But yeah, sometimes you write chapters out of order and you don't realize it. Sometimes if you're finding that some chapters aren't fitting, it could be that maybe there's a chapter or two that just needs to be cut. Are there any of those chapters that, like right now, you could cut and then it would actually free up the story? So you've got options. There are no right or wrong answers, I think. I mean, I think it happens to everybody. But just do what you can to nip the problem in the bud with as few steps as possible so that you can keep moving forward. That would be my advice. I workshopped an intro into a creative nonfiction piece, and the feedback was the first paragraph was boring. This from mostly fiction writers who believe the first line should grab. Thoughts? And to be clear, it is an introduction. Your thoughts on... Well, I think you answered your own question, Amy. It's a bunch of writers giving you that feedback. I would just throw it out the window. Who cares what other writers think? I care about what paying readers think, and to me, that's the ultimate answer. So, workshopping, I have my own thoughts about that. I used to workshop my work, and I just stopped doing it because I realized that the opinions of other writers really don't. It has nothing to do with the actual people that are going to be purchasing my story. So sorry about the background noise there, but that's again, that's an opinion of one. To me, an introduction, sure. I mean, everyone says the first line needs to grab, but who, according to who? You could give me your first paragraph, and maybe it's fine for me. As someone who's not into that. I mean, someone who doesn't normally read what you write. I don't think it matters. Write the first paragraph that you feel conveys what you're trying to convey. Make sure that there are certain, make sure there's no grammar issues or spelling issues. Make sure that it gives people a visual image, and do the best you can. That's my thoughts on workshopping. And, I think if you spend a lot of time getting opinions from other writers, you'll go down the wrong path. I think the best thing to do is stay in touch with readers and look at some books in your genre, and look at how other authors are starting those, and then do something similar to that. And you really can never go wrong if you sing that song. That's just the opinion of one. Okay. All right, here. Wylan asks, are there better or worse times a year to publish different kinds of books, like there are with movies? Yeah, I would say summer is probably the worst time to publish books. That said, I still publish tons of books in the summer. I do my Beast Mode collections in the summer. But I think that a lot of people on the traditional publishing side would tell you, and I think they're correct, that a lot of people just don't buy books during the summer. Just like a lot of writers don't write books during the summer either, because it's nice outside. Summer, depending on where you live in the world, right? Because our summer is some people's winter, but in the United States, at least, it's nice outside in the summer, and people they're going to be spending time with their families. They're going to be at the beach. They're going to be taking family vacations. And so writing and reading just kind of falls on the back burner. But that said, I've released some books in the summer and they've done really well. So I think it depends on a lot of factors that are just outside of your control that you just don't have any insights into. So for me, I would just publish the book when you're ready to publish it, because really, when you publish a book, it's not like you've only got one shot. Like I think a lot of writers think that I've only got one shot to sell this book, because I got to make sure I publish it at the right time. But really, the book is going to be available for your life plus 70 years if you do your proper planning. And there could be a book that you wrote today that maybe it didn't hit the mark. Maybe no one wants to read books about necromancers today. But then 5 years from now, there's a Netflix special, and all of a sudden everybody wants to read books about necromancers. Well, aren't you glad you published that book now so you can take advantage of it in the future? So for me, I think it's really just a matter of publish the book, then figure out what to do with it. Because if you spend your time waiting on when to publish it, I think you can make a mistake, and it may not make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Do you use Autocrit? I only asked because I started using it and was curious. I applied after each chapter. I think I tried Autocrit at one point. It's interesting. I think they've developed an interesting product. For my purposes, I just didn't find it that terribly helpful for what I was trying to do. It's more, it gives you more feedback on the developmental side of things, which I still think it's probably better than an actual developmental editor personally, but you guys know how I feel about that. But I think I had tried out Autocrit. I tried out Grammarly and ProWriting Aid, and those were the two that I kind of gravitated toward. Maybe it's different now. I think with artificial intelligence, I think it's going to continue to get smarter. And I do think that there's going to be a day at some point where authors are using Autocrit or like an app that's like it, where you can run your manuscript through and get some feedback based on certain parameters. I still think the technology has a long way to go, but I do think that, technology could eventually replace a developmental editor. We're not there yet, though. We're not there yet. So I can't really be that helpful to you on Autocrit. All I can tell you is that I just prefer just a straight up app that helps me with copy editing, not so much with story and characters, because you kind of have to take the feedback that an app like that gives you with a grain of salt, at least right now while the technology is still evolving. Seppuku Art, just want to say hello and thank you. I'm a novice novelist and I'm curious about your thoughts on Wattpad. Yeah, I think Wattpad is great. I don't have any concerns with Wattpad. It's been around forever at this point. It depends on your genre, though, if you want to use it. I think Wattpad had a stigma, or not, I shouldn't say call it a stigma, but certainly had a reputation for a long time about being YA focused. And I think there's a lot more on Wattpad than just YA, but I think that if you do write YA, that might be something you want to think about. There's Wattpad's not the only game in town. It was for a while, but there's lots of other websites out there that are very similar to it. Comaful is another one. I think Radish Dream is another one. There's lots of sites out there that are like Wattpad, but they're different and they skew differently toward other audiences. I haven't really used Wattpad that much just because I haven't found that there's been a whole lot of readers there for me. Even when I published stuff there and tried to push it, just never really got that much traction. So I try to focus on other areas, but give it a shot. Give it a shot and see. The big thing with a platform like that is just making sure you understand how to use it and use it as a practitioner of how other people who are big on the platform are using it, and stick with it for 3 to 4 months and see what happens. If you get a couple readers, cool. If you don't get the response that you like or that you would have expected, then try something else. Just try to figure out the service that fits you like a glove. Because there's nothing worse than using something that you don't like, because then your content's not really going to be that inspired, and I think readers can sense that. Like for me, YouTube is what fits me like a glove. Like when I come on YouTube, I'm in my element. Like I'm here talking to you guys, answering questions, and inevitably many of you go on to buy my books, and that's the service that I use, right? And what I tell people is to find the service that fits for you like YouTube fits for me. And if that's Wattpad, then cool. Wanjiru, how are you able to write a book that fast? How long do you think about it before you start writing? Yeah, very interesting question. I'm able to write so quickly because I don't want to say I don't care, because that's not the right way to say it and probably gives the wrong perception. But I just want to tell a story, and I just get out of my own way, and I find that I'm able to accomplish so much if I just sit down, stop thinking about, are what people going to like this? Are they not going to like it? And I just write it, and that's why I was able to write, 3,000, 4,000 words over the last few days per day, is because I just enjoy telling a story, and it's fun for me. Like I keep it fun, and I keep challenging myself. So like it was Wednesday or Thursday, I wrote 3,000 words. So I said, okay, the next day, can I write 3,100 words? And then I did. And then the next day, can I write 3,200 words? And I did. And then next thing I knew, I had 10,000 words that I had written in like half a week. So I think the big thing is just clearing out all the myths, focusing on not listening to that self-doubt, not listening to that critical voice. I think that's the first thing. And then when you've figured all that out, then it's just figuring out what the right tools are. So when you do sit down, you get a lot more mileage out of your time. So like normally I like to dictate. I don't do it on these power hours because I just get so many questions on, oh, you're on mute. What are you doing? We can't hear you. But I like to dictate, and that helps me increase the mileage from my writing sessions, because when you dictate, you can actually speak 2 to 3 times faster than if you type. And when I do dishes, I like to dictate my stories. So the 10, 15 minutes it takes me to do dishes, I can speak my stories, and I might have 1,000 words to show for it. And right now I've been experimenting with an app called Pseudo-Write. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's a AI-driven writing app where you can actually type in your work, and then I think once you've got like 400 to 500 words, you click a button called a wormhole, and then it actually generates potential text for you to use. It's not like it writes your whole novel for you. It really just kind of gives you ideas, like for jumping off points. It's called Pseudo-Write, SUDO Write. I'll probably do a review of it at some point on the channel. And it's really interesting, and sometimes it recommends stuff that's like, oh, okay, let's try that. It's fun. I try to keep it fun. So the long scenic route answer to your question, if I could sum it up, is just find ways to eliminate that voice in your head. Just tell it to sit down and shut up. And then once you've done that, find ways to keep the writing fun, and then find the right tools that turn you into a superhuman. And if you can do that, then you can write a book as fast as I write it. And frankly, I'm really not a fast writer. I know that some of you are probably laughing now as I say that. I'm really not a fast writer. There are writers that write circles around me. A lot of the old school pulp writers, they could turn out 2 or 3 novels in a month. And I'm not quite near that yet. So maybe one day I will be. Wylan, are your books in libraries? How do you get your books into libraries? Yes, my books are in libraries. Ebook, mostly ebooks. I have had, I think, some libraries order my paperbacks. I don't really have any concrete proof of it, but I've heard through the grapevine that some people have seen my books in libraries. The easiest way to get your book into libraries, it's kind of 2 answers. The first answer is ebooks are a lot easier to get into libraries. If you distribute through Draft to Digital or Publish Drive or Smashwords, I think StreetLib as well, they have options that can get you into libraries. So there's Library Direct, there's Baker and Taylor, Gardner's. You can get your book there, and as long as your book is priced correctly, that's the big thing about ebooks, is because libraries, when they buy an ebook, technically there's a limit to how many times they can lend it. So you just want to make sure that your book is priced properly, so that because when a library lends an ebook, when they purchase an ebook, they're gonna, if you've ever used Overdrive, the book gets checked in and out by multiple people. So if you're charging a library the same that you would charge for somebody who buys your book on Amazon, you're probably not doing it right. You probably want to charge a little bit more. So that's ebooks. So that's the answer there. So that's a pretty easy way to get into libraries if they decide they want to carry your book. And then you really just want to have your readers contact libraries in their area to ask to carry your books if you really want to get in that way. If you want to get your paperbacks into libraries, this is something I'm still exploring. So kind of take my advice with a grain of salt. The best way to do it, first off, is you need to distribute through Ingram Spark. There are some libraries that will buy through Amazon, but most won't. I was actually just talking to someone about this yesterday. Distribute through Ingram Spark, which means you have to purchase your own ISBNs. Well, you should if you go through Ingram Spark. And then you also have to make sure that your book is priced properly so that people in the trade channels can purchase your book if they want to. So, but they have to be able to get the right discount, because otherwise, if your book is overpriced, they're not going to buy it. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it as well, it's more of a yes and, is to become a member of the Independent Book Publishers Association, IBPA. I think they charge for authors, it's about $140 a year. And they have a lot of different services. But one of the services they offer is marketing assistance. So they actually have a curated list of librarians, and you can actually pay, I don't know how much it is you have to pay, but you can pay to get your books listed in library catalogs. And so if your book is something that a librarian would want, they can browse those catalogs and make purchases of your book that way. So that's short answer of how you get your books into libraries. The Alliance of Independent Authors has a book. I think it's called How to Get Your Books into Bookstores and Libraries. You can look that up, and that'll give you some more advice. Okay, let's see. Robert Schwartz, any advice on foreign writers who try to write in another language? I feel like I'm there plot-wise and skill-wise, but feel the last few percentages are somehow missing. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Robert. I don't know. I mean, I would think if you're going to write in another language, I mean, you kind of have to be fluent in the other language, which, it sounds like you don't have that problem. I mean, if I were to write a novel in Spanish, there's just so many cultural things that I would have to know in order to do it. And I think it could be done, though. I mean, I know lots. In fact, there was someone in my community who emailed me last year. It was last year or a year before last, and she was telling me she was very self-conscious about publishing a book in English because it was her second language, and she asked if I would read through it. And I read through like the first chapter, and I couldn't tell. She spoke English better than me, to be honest with you. Her command of the English language was better than mine. So I think get the book in front of some people who are natives in the language and ask them what they think. And if they're giving you thumbs up, then I think you got nothing to worry about. But if the feedback is, hey, maybe you could have said it this way, or I wasn't quite sure what you meant that way, then maybe those are the things you want to focus on in your editing. But kudos to you for being able to do that. That's a phenomenal skill set. All right. Dr. Gandhi, which is wise to write these days, fiction or nonfiction? Well, it depends on what you want to write. There's no wrong answer. If you like to write fiction, write fiction. If you want to write nonfiction, write nonfiction. The only wrong answer, I think, is trying to write to trend. So if books on boats are hot, you all of a sudden want to write books on boats. Or better yet, if you decide that you want to write books on crypto because crypto is what's hot right now, but you have no passion around crypto, I think that is the wrong answer. So Anna says, dictating wouldn't work. My brain to mouth is too slow, and I'm scared of my own voice. Makes my thoughts jumble. I think a lot of people have that criticism, Anna. I think you would be surprised, though. A lot of people, when they think about dictation, they think, well, it has to come out in this smooth, fluid manner. But if you actually listen to people when they dictate, it's actually anything but that. It's actually quite jumbled. And it's slow and it's choppy, and yeah, like I said, it's a muscle you have to learn. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you learn how to ride a bike, you never forget it. Dictating's kind of the same way. If anybody here ever played, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but there was an old video game I used to play for PlayStation 2 called Devil May Cry 3, and insanely impossible game. Like the first several levels, you play it and you play it and you play it and just keep kicking your ass. And then at some point, you get your ass kicked so much that you realize, oh wait, now I know how to play this. It's kind of like that with dictation. I know that's a super obscure example, but you get used to it. But if it's your jam, and it is not everyone's jam. So, but I always recommend if you've never tried it and you think it's not your jam, try it once. You might be surprised. Wanjiro, is tax a hassle if an author markets in foreign markets, Canada, UK, Germany? No, not really. Not really, because you're going to be taxed in your home currency. So if you publish books and you distribute to Canada and Germany and South Africa and Australia, the retailers are going to convert the currency to your home currency before you get paid. And the only taxes you're going to owe are the taxes in your home currency. That, I imagine, is the case for the majority of people who are watching this. But no, you won't have to pay. You won't have to pay taxes in England, for example. However, in England, the only thing you have to think about is pricing your book accordingly because of the value added tax. So in some countries around the world, if you price your book at $4.99 or 4 units and 99 cents, depending on where you're selling it, the reader will pay that, but then they'll also pay an additional tax on top of that. So that's the only thing you really got to think about, but not too difficult. All right. I just found you yesterday. Use Kindle Unlimited with traditional rights reverted. When I returned, I chose to use other vendors. What are your thoughts about KU? Yeah, I actually have a video on KU. I did it like back in 2017, but I think it's still, for the most part, pretty accurate. You can go to my channel and just search for Kindle Unlimited. If I remember, I'll drop a link to it. But just type in is KDP Select worth it, and you'll find it. My thoughts on here are my thoughts on Kindle Unlimited. I think Kindle Unlimited is not a bad service if you're just getting started and you're trying to build a readership. There is no doubt in my mind, and this has been true for the last 8 years that I've been doing this. There's no doubt in my mind that being in Kindle Unlimited on Amazon gives you better visibility, especially when you launch your book for the first time. There's the evidence, I think, is overwhelmingly clear. I don't think anyone can debate that if you take 2 equal books and one of them is in Kindle Unlimited and one of them is not, and they're amazing books and readers want them, the book that's in Kindle Unlimited is probably going to get better visibility. All right. But herein lies the problem. Kindle Unlimited, KDP Select, it's just one part of the world. Most of the readers are in the United States. And basically, if you commit long-term to Kindle Unlimited, you're basically saying to the rest of the world, I don't really care that you can't buy my books. So it's a fraction of the market. And, it is a tough market. It is a really tough market. There are certain types of writers that do very well in Kindle Unlimited. Those writers tend to be the writers that can write really fast, kind of at the pace that I write. And they tend to stick to one genre, and they tend to have a very rapid release schedule. And that's cool if that's your thing. I can keep up with a lot of the writers in Kindle Unlimited. I just don't like the fact that the majority of the world can't buy my books, because long term, that's really not a good strategy. So I think I've only got one series in Kindle Unlimited right now, and that's just because I was dipping my toe in the water, just trying to see how things had changed. But for the most part, 98% of my books are not in Kindle Unlimited. And the reason I'm doing that is because I know long term that's going to benefit me more, because other retailers, they might be more difficult to sell books at, but they tend to be a little bit stickier with the algorithms. So like if you can get your book selling really well at like Kobo or Apple, you'll find that the sales tend to be more sustained over a longer period. And you're building a community of readers that is everywhere, and that's more international. So that's my thought. If you want to dip your toe in the water with KU to start, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think you just make sure you have a plan and a date of when you're going to get out, because you don't want to be one of those authors that gets sucked in and then maybe you're making really, really good money, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because anything can happen. Amazon could wake up one day and decide that they want to cancel your account, and there goes your publishing career. And I think we can all agree that's what you don't want. Okay, have you heard of iUniverse? If so, what's your opinion about the company? I have not heard of iUniverse, so I can't comment. I would recommend you check out the Alliance of Independent Authors. They have a service. It's called their Self-Publishing Ratings Directory. I'll throw that in the comments. They may be rated there, but the Alliance of Independent Authors, Ally, they do a really, really good job of vetting out services that are reputable for authors. And they do a really good job of calling out the bad guys, too. So look them up there and see if you can find them. Okay, Dr. Gandhi, which one do you prefer to edit your manuscript? ProWriting Aid, Grammarly, or something else? All of the above, Dr. Gandhi. Actually, it's funny you mention that. So I'm not going to keep pimping my books on here, but I have a book. It's called Advanced Author Editing. You all can check it out if you want. My editing process has evolved over the last 2 years or so. So here's what I do. When I write my books, the first thing I do is I go through and I do self-editing. All right, so I go through and I usually I write my books in one draft, but so when I say self-editing, what I really mean is I just go through and read everything and just look for anything that's noticeably out of place. Look for typos, look for issues. I don't really spend a whole lot of time because when I write as I go, I'm doing most of that editing as I go. But I do that, and then I'll run the manuscript through Microsoft Word editor. You know, it's not the greatest thing, but it'll help you catch a few things. And I only use the spelling and grammar options. I don't use any other crap like consistency or formality or any of that stuff, because that'll just steer you down the wrong path. But I use spelling and grammar on Microsoft Word's editor. Then I'll use Grammarly. So I use the free version of Grammarly. I don't use the paid version. I just don't find that the paid version really adds any value to what a fiction or nonfiction writer would be doing. So I use the free version of Grammarly, and I go through, and Grammarly catches a lot of good stuff. For example, it'll help you catch missing determiners, almost all of your missing determiners. So missing pronouns, missing that's, things like that. It'll help you catch that, missing articles. And then Grammarly is also pretty good at catching missing words that you might. Sometimes when you look at a sentence, your eye automatically puts a word there even though it's not there. So Grammarly helps with that. There's some things that Grammarly really does a good job with. And then what I do is I run it through ProWriting Aid. So I actually have the lifetime license of ProWriting Aid. And there's a few of the checks there that I've enabled, and I'll run it through that because I find that Grammarly and ProWriting Aid Grammarly does some things really well and some things really poorly. ProWriting Aid does often some other things really well and some other things really poorly. And when you mix them together, you actually can catch more errors than you would if you only used one of them. All right. Now, there is the issue that sometimes Grammarly will recommend something and ProWriting Aid will recommend the opposite. That I think is a minor issue that you can usually avoid. So I'll use ProWriting Aid. Then I use an app called Perfectit. So Perfectit is a proofreading app, and this is actually an app that proofreaders use. And I use Perfectit, and that'll help me catch stuff that Grammarly and ProWriting Aid won't even think about touching. And Perfectit is a paid app, but I think it's worth the money. And then after Perfectit, I actually have a suite of Microsoft Word macros that I've developed. I actually worked with a programmer to develop a bunch of different Microsoft Word macros that basically help me catch things that none of the above can catch. And then one of those macros is actually a free macro from a gentleman named Paul Beverly. It's called Fredit, F-R-Edit. Look it up sometime. And it's basically like a scripted find and replace. So I can program a bunch of words into that, and it'll help me make sure that I'm using them correctly, those sorts of things. So Microsoft Word, Grammarly, ProWriting Aid, Microsoft Word macros, Perfectit. And then after that, at that point, I've got a pretty clean manuscript. That's the process that I follow. And I can actually put some numbers to this. Like by following this process, I actually have reduced my edits by about 50% from my editor. It made a gigantic difference in sending stuff to my editor. So makes a very big difference. And I talk about all that in the book that I talked about, which is Advanced Author Editing.